Talk Ava. Learn English with confidence.
Today, we are going to look at a small but important difference that can change how your English sounds in real conversations. We will focus on how to use to and enough correctly so your sentences feel natural and clear.
Many learners know these words, but they still make mistakes when they try to use them while speaking.
Yes, and the interesting part is that the mistake is usually not about vocabulary. It is about how the sentence is built. If you are new here, welcome to Talk Ava. We practice real English through natural conversations, so you can use it confidently in daily life.
And since the channel is new, your support matters. You can like this video, share it with someone learning English, and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes.
Now, let's start with a simple situation, because this is where the confusion usually begins.
I was talking to someone recently, and I said, "This shirt is too small for me." But then I paused because I was not fully sure if that was the best way to say it.
That is interesting, because the sentence sounds correct, but you still felt unsure.
Yes, and then I heard someone else say, "This shirt is not big enough for me." And that made me think about the difference.
Both sentences are talking about size, but they are structured differently.
Yes, and that is where the confusion starts. Learners often know the words, but they're not sure when to use to and when to use enough.
That is because the meaning is similar, but the structure changes.
Exactly, and I realized that I sometimes mix them without noticing. For example, I have heard people say, "This is enough big," which sounds wrong, but the idea is clear.
That is a common mistake. The word order is not correct in that sentence.
Yes, and I have also heard, "I am too much tired," which again shows the idea, but the structure is not natural.
So the problem is not understanding the meaning. The problem is forming the sentence correctly.
That is what makes this topic important. These are simple words, but they can easily make your English sound unnatural if used incorrectly.
Let's take a very simple comparison. If something is more than you need, you often use too. For example, "This bag is too heavy." It means it is more heavy than I can manage. And when something is at the level you need, you use enough. For example, "This bag is light enough." It means it is suitable for me. When you don't understand,
Exactly. And there is also a third issue. Many learners learn rules separately, but they don't see how they work together in real sentences.
That makes it harder to apply them during speaking.
Yes, because in real conversation, you don't have time to think about rules. You need patterns that feel natural.
Let's take the example, "I am too much tired." How would you correct it?
The correct version is, "I am too tired." We remove much because too already carries that idea.
When you don't understand, you can think like this. "To" is already strong, so you don't need to add another word for intensity.
Yes, and for "this room is enough big," the correct version is, "this room is big enough."
That shows another important rule. With enough, the adjective comes before enough.
Exactly, and that is where word order becomes important. It is not just about choosing the right word, but placing it correctly.
So now we can see 3 clear reasons why these mistakes happen.
First, learners translate directly from their own language.
Second, they mix different structures without noticing.
And third, they are not fully comfortable with English word order.
Once you see these reasons, the mistakes start to make more sense.
Yes, and that is important, because when you understand why a mistake happens, it becomes easier to fix it.
Another thing to notice is that these mistakes often appear when people try to speak quickly.
Yes, because when you are speaking, you don't have time to analyze every word. You rely on what feels familiar.
And if the pattern you learned is not correct, you will repeat the same mistake.
Exactly, and that is why practice with correct patterns is important.
Instead of memorizing rules, you focus on how the sentence naturally sounds.
Yes, for example, too tired, too heavy, too expensive. These patterns start to feel natural when you hear and use them often.
And for enough, you start noticing patterns like big enough,
strong enough, good enough. Once these patterns become familiar, you don't need to think about them. They come automatically. That is the goal, not just understanding, but using the structure naturally. And we will continue using simple examples so everything stays clear and practical. Now that we understand why these mistakes happen, I started focusing on how to actually work.
Exactly. And that is how I started to understand the difference more clearly.
There is also another pattern with enough. We can use it before nouns.
Yes, for example, enough time, enough money, or enough space.
In this case, enough comes before the noun, not after.
So we say, I have enough time, not I have time enough.
That is correct. And it is important to notice the difference between adjectives and nouns.
Yes, with adjectives, it is adjective plus enough, and with nouns, it is enough plus noun.
When you don't understand, you can remember it like this. Enough moves depending on what it is describing.
That helped me a lot, because I stopped trying to use one fixed pattern.
Let's compare both words in the same situation to make it clear.
If I say, I have too much work, it means I have more work than I can manage.
But if you say, I have enough work, it means the amount of work is sufficient.
Yes, and that shows how the meaning changes depending on the word you choose.
Another example could be time. I don't have enough time means time is not sufficient.
And I have too much time could mean I have more time than I need, which is a different situation.
That comparison makes the difference very clear.
Yes, and once I started thinking in this way, the confusion reduced a lot.
Because now you are not memorizing rules. You are understanding how the sentence works.
Exactly. And that makes it easier to use these words while speaking. That will help you apply these patterns without thinking too much about rules.
And that is where your speaking becomes more natural.
Now that the patterns are clear, I started testing them in real conversations. And I noticed that correcting small mistakes makes a big difference.
Let's go through some common sentences so the difference becomes clear. One sentence I heard was, I am too much tired. The meaning is understandable, but the structure is not natural. The correct version is, I am too tired. We remove much because too already shows the intensity. Another example is, this place is enough big. Again, the idea is clear, but the word order is wrong. The correct version is, this place is big enough. The adjective comes before enough. I also heard, I have too many work. This is another common mistake.
These words are useful, but they should be used when they match the meaning.
For example, if there is no idea of excess or sufficiency, you don't need them.
That keeps your sentences clear and balanced.
I also noticed that when I focus on patterns instead of rules, I make fewer mistakes.
That is because patterns are easier to remember during conversation.
Yes, instead of thinking, I just use what sounds natural. Too tired, big enough, too much work, enough time.
Those patterns become automatic with practice.
And once they become automatic, you don't need to stop and think while speaking.
That improves fluency and confidence. That will help you move from understanding to using these patterns without hesitation.
When I look back at how I used to use to and enough, the difference is very clear. I understood the words, but my sentences did not always follow the natural patterns.
That is a common situation. Many learners know the meaning, but they are not comfortable with the structure.
Yes, and that is what creates mistakes. Not lack of knowledge, but lack of correct patterns.
Now the patterns are simple to remember. To comes before adjectives and shows something more than needed.
For example, too tired, too heavy, or too expensive.
And enough comes after adjectives or before nouns, depending on what it describes.
For example, big enough, strong enough, and enough time, enough money.
When you don't understand, you can think like this. To means more than needed, and enough means sufficient.
That simple idea helps guide your sentence.
Another important point is meaning. To often shows a problem, while enough shows that something is suitable or not sufficient.
Yes, for example, This bag is too heavy means it is difficult to use.
And this bag is light enough means it is suitable.
Once I started thinking this way, my sentences became clearer and more natural.
That is because you're not just choosing words. You're choosing the right structure and meaning.
Another useful habit is to practice these patterns in simple sentences.
For example, I am too tired. This is too much. This is big enough. I have enough time.
Repeating these patterns helps them become automatic.
And when they become automatic, you don't need to stop and think during conversation.
That makes your speech smoother and more confident.
The goal is not to remember rules. The goal is to use patterns